All right, so you guys are always trying to learn new stuff and make the most of your time, right?
That's the name of the game.
Exactly. So today we're going to take a deep dive together on something a little different.
Yeah, it is different.
You send in this article called How to Squat for Huge Arms.
That's the one.
Yeah, by Stuart McRobert.
Yeah. I love that guy.
Yeah.
And it's based on his book, Brawn.
Okay, so right away, how to squat for huge arms.
Right.
Kind of throws you for a loop, right?
Yeah.
You think about building big arms and you think of, bicep curl.
Yeah, like all the isolation exercises.
Yeah, exactly. So our mission today is to understand why Stuart McRobert thinks that the best way to get bigger arms is not to directly train your arms.
Yeah, that's a very interesting approach.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So the big idea here, the core concept, is that we should not be directly chasing big arms.
Yeah, and he actually says it very simply. He says, to build muscle mass, you must increase strength. It's that simple.
Mm.
So he's saying that to get those big arms, to get any muscle growth, you have to increase your overall strength.
Interesting.
And the way you do that is by focusing on compound exercises.
Okay, so I think I'm starting to see where this is going.
Yeah.
If you're not seeing the arm growth you want, maybe it's because you're focusing on the wrong things.
Exactly. We often overlook what he calls power training.
Okay, power training. What's that?
It's basically consistently trying to lift heavier weights in those big compound movements, like squats, deadlifts, bench presses.
Okay, so you're saying a lot of people, maybe they're trying to specialize too early.
Yeah, that's a very common mistake. They want those sculpted biceps and triceps, so they jump into these isolation exercises right away.
Right.
But he thinks that's like trying to build the roof of a house before you've laid a solid foundation. You need that overall strength first.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I know I've definitely fallen into that trap before. Like, I just want to have big arms,
Oh, yeah, me too.
Everyone wants big arms.
Yeah, exactly. So what does McRobert say about people who are really fixated on arm development? Well, he totally gets it. He understands that desire.
Right.
Who doesn't want impressive arms?
Right.
But what he questions is the approach.
Okay, how so?
He says a lot of beginners, they just jump straight into bicep curls and triceps extensions.
Yeah, makes sense.
So he's like, hold on a second. Let's see where you're at with your overall strength first. He actually uses what he calls the squat benchmark as a good indicator of your overall development.
Okay, the squat benchmark, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about that.
So he says that if you can't squat 1.5 times your body weight for 20 reps
Whoa.
with good form, then maybe you're not ready for an arm specialization program.
So like if I weigh, I don't know, 180 pounds,
Yeah,
then I should be able to squat, what, like 270 for 20 reps?
exactly. And that's not easy.
No, definitely not.
But McRobert makes a really bold claim. He says that if you reach that level of strength through squats, you'll actually build bigger arms faster
Then doing just arms?
than if you were just doing isolation exercises for your biceps and triceps.
Okay, hold on. I'm a little confused here. Squats are a leg exercise. How does that make my arms bigger?
That's a great question. And the answer lies in understanding that squats are a full body exercise.
Okay.
When you squat, you're not just working your legs, you're also engaging your core, your back, your shoulders, even your arms to some extent.
Huh, I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, and think about it. If you can squat a significant amount of weight for a lot of reps, it means that your whole body is strong.
Makes sense.
It's rare to find someone who can squat heavy but has a weak upper body.
Okay, so I guess the takeaway here is that heavy squatting triggers muscle growth throughout the whole body.
Exactly. It's like a knock-on effect. The effort required to squat heavy, it creates this hormonal environment that's great for overall muscle building.
So basically, by focusing on squats, you're indirectly stimulating arm growth as well.
Yeah, that's the idea. He's not saying that you should completely ignore your arms,
Okay, good.
but he does say that arm work should come second.
Okay.
Prioritize those big lifts like squats, deadlifts, rows for legs, hips, back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You build that foundation first, and then you can start adding in some isolation exercises.
Okay, so the big multi-joint exercises come first.
Right.
And then the smaller muscle groups benefit indirectly from that overall growth.
Precisely. And he also says that the strength you build from those power movements, it actually helps you lift heavier when you do eventually train your arms directly.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's like building a base of strength that allows you to build more specialized muscle on top.
So basically, you're becoming stronger at arm exercises by getting stronger at squats and deadlifts.
Exactly. It might sound counterintuitive, but that's his argument.
Yeah, it's definitely not the message you usually hear.
Yeah.
Especially not for young guys who are obsessed with arm size.
Yeah. He talks about that in the article. He says he's seen countless young guys in the gym who are just laser focused on their arm.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
You know, they're trying to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger
Of course.
or Robbie Robinson or Ronnie Coleman.
All the greats.
Yeah, but he points out that those guys are genetic freaks. Yeah, and they were probably training multiple times a day.
Exactly. And maybe using other things too.
Right, so for the average person trying to achieve that level of arm development,
It's just not realistic.
right, especially if you have an underdeveloped physique overall.
Yeah, he makes a great analogy here.
Lay it on me.
He says focusing on arm exercises when you have a skinny physique is like trying to put elaborate icing on a cake before the cake has even been baked.
Wow. Okay, that's a powerful analogy.
It really highlights the misplaced focus.
Yeah, instead of obsessing over the icing, which is like our arms,
Right.
we need to bake a substantial cake first, which is the rest of our body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, build those big muscle groups first.
So thighs, hips, back.
Yeah. And he also includes the chest and shoulders.
Okay, so upper body pushing muscles too.
Exactly. He's saying that for most people, you won't see significant arm growth until you've built a solid base in those larger areas.
He mentioned something called the knock-on additive effect.
Yeah.
What exactly is that?
So it's this idea that when you prioritize building size in your thighs, hips, and back,
And chest and shoulders.
right, all those big areas, the smaller muscle groups will actually grow as well.
Oh, wow. So like a side effect of training the bigger muscles.
Exactly. It's not like everything else stays the same while your legs and back get huge.
Right.
As those areas grow, your arms will also tend to grow in proportion.
Interesting. So it's a more holistic approach to muscle growth.
I think that's a good way to put it.
So what specific exercises does McRobert recommend for building that foundation?
Well, for legs and back, he says squats and deadlifts.
Classic.
For chest and shoulders, bench presses and overhead presses.
Okay.
And then some type of rowing exercise for back.
Like barbell rows or pull-ups?
Yeah, exactly. He says you can definitely add in some isolation exercises for your arms later on.
Okay, so like bicep curls and tricep extensions.
Right. But after you've built that foundation...
So it's all about prioritizing those big compound movements.
Exactly. He calls those big muscle groups the drivers of muscle growth.
The drivers
Yeah, it's like they're the engine that fuels the gains in the smaller areas.
makes sense. So basically, if you're not training those big muscle groups hard enough,
You're going to have a hard time building size anywhere else.
including your arms.
Exactly, even if you're doing tons of bicep curls.
So this has been really interesting, but let's bring it back to arm growth specifically.
Yeah.
What are the practical takeaways here for someone who wants bigger biceps and triceps?
So the main takeaway is that the best way to get big arms is to focus on building overall strength and mass.
By training the big muscle groups.
Exactly. He says most people will see the best results by focusing on leg, hip, and back exercises.
And chest and shoulders too.
Right. And then adding in some direct arm work later on.
So don't neglect those bicep curls entirely.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But understand that they'll be much more effective after you've built that foundation.
Okay, that makes sense. So basically, we're trying to build a powerful engine before we add the fancy accessories.
Exactly. And he gives some really interesting examples. He says that if you increase your squat strength by, let's say, 100 pounds,
Wow.
your curling strength should also increase significantly.
Like, how much are we talking?
He says maybe around 30 pounds.
Really? From squatting more?
Yeah, because your overall strength has increased. And the same goes for bench press.
So if my squat goes up, my bench press will too.
Most likely. He says a 100-pound increase in squat could lead to a 50 to 70-pound increase in bench press.
Wow. So strength gains in one area can translate to strength gains in other areas.
Exactly. It's like a rising tide lifts all ships.
Yeah, I like that analogy. So basically, getting stronger at squats can help you get stronger at bicep curls and bench press.
Precisely. And that means bigger arms.
So it all comes back to those big compound movements.
Absolutely. And he also makes a really important point about body weight.
Okay, what's that?
He says, few people can get big arms without having a big body.
Meaning?
You can't expect to have 17-inch arms if you only weigh 140 pounds.
Right, that makes sense.
It's just not realistic for most people.
So trying to get huge arms while staying super lean?
It's probably not going to work.
Okay, so what's the alternative?
Focus on building overall mass first.
Yeah.
And he contrasts two different approaches. He talks about the guys who do endless sets of arm isolation exercises.
Yeah, I've seen those guys.
And then he talks about the guys who prioritize heavy compound movements.
And who does he think gets better results?
The guys who focus on the compound movements
Every time.
every time. He says that those big lifts, they force your body to grow.
It's all starting to make sense now.
Yeah, it's about working smarter, not harder.
So we should be focusing on building that foundation of strength
Exactly.
rather than just trying to isolate individual muscles.
Precisely. And he even gives some examples of what that might look like.
Okay, I'm listening.
He says, imagine someone who can only squat and deadlift about 200 pounds.
Okay, not super strong.
Right. He says that person is probably not going to see arm growth no matter how much they train their arms directly.
Interesting.
But if that same person increases their squat to 300 pounds,
Well, that's a big jump.
yeah, and they gain some overall muscle mass,
Right.
then their arms could potentially grow to 16 inches.
Without even doing that much arm work.
Yeah, it's about building that foundation first.
That's crazy. I never would have thought that squats could have such a big impact on arm size.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And he even talks about how to get 17-inch arms.
Okay, how's that?
He says you probably need to be squatting around twice your body weight
Oh my
and
God.
have a lot of overall muscle mass.
So basically we're saying that the key to big arms is to focus on building overall strength and size.
Exactly. As McRobert says, the shortest distance between you and big arms is not a straight line to a curl bar.
That's a good one. I'm going to have to remember that one.
Yeah, it's a great quote.
So I know the article also includes a sample workout routine.
It does.
Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, sure. So it's a 3-day per week program
Okay.
focused on strength, mass, and power.
It's dead.
It is, but it's effective. So on Mondays, you're doing squats, T-bar rows or seated rows, and standing calf raises.
So legs and back.
Exactly. Wednesdays are for chest and arms, so bench presses, dips, barbell curls, and reverse crunches.
Okay.
And then Fridays, you're hitting deadlifts, military presses, or behind the neck presses, seated calf raises and crunches.
So basically a full body split.
Yeah, and the key is to focus on increasing the weight you lift over time.
Progressive overload.
Exactly. He says that you should make the last rep of each set challenging.
But still maintain good form.
Right. You don't want to sacrifice form for weight.
So for everyone listening who tuned in because they want bigger arms,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you want them to remember from this deep dive?
Prioritize building a strong foundation by focusing on compound exercises.
Squats, deadlifts, bench presses.
Exactly. Those big movements are the key to overall muscle growth.
Including arm growth.
Exactly. You can add in direct arm work later.
But those big exercises need to come first.
Right. It's like building a house. You need a strong foundation before you can add the roof.
Perfect analogy. So instead of doing endless bicep curls,
Yeah,
maybe it's time to start focusing on increasing your squat and deadlift numbers.
exactly. Think about what your current squat benchmark is.
Right, that 1.5 times body weight for 20 reps.
Exactly. And how increasing that number might just be the key to finally getting those big arms you've always wanted.
So focus on building a powerful engine.
And the arms will follow.
Awesome advice.
Yep.
Thanks for breaking all that down for us.
My pleasure.
And for you listening, we hope this deep dive has given you a new perspective on how to approach your training.
Yeah, and maybe even inspired you to try something new.
So until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.
See ya.